Okay, everyone, hi. This is hopefully the last video of the lecture 7 about leisure geography, and we're talking about third topic of the environmental impact of leisure. So over the past decades, and especially over the past 10 years or so, it's getting increasingly clear based on research and our experience that the Earth is literally on fire. There's more and there are strong, long wildfires. Canada has not been an exception to that. We have had a really bad wildfires, especially the western side, including Alberta too. And we have had observed many other extreme weathers as well, drought, heat wave, more icefall, many other things, hurricanes, tornadoes, you name it. The reason why we talk about environmental impact here is because environment is an important part of quality of life or happiness as well for humans as well as our leisure behaviors. So really the environment, like a culture in a way in the previous chapter, environment encompasses our leisure behavior and the happiness quality of life. If we don't have a good environment, our leisure quality is going to go down, right? Our happiness is more likely to go down as well. So it's very important not to just think about, okay, how leisure help our personal human well-being, but also what about the well-being of environment? How does leisure impact that? So really the key question here is this: is leisure good for environment? And as you read in the chapter, the answer is not necessarily, depends on what activities and depends on how you do it. So the first type of major impact chapter talked about is tourism effect. And this is a graph that summarizes not just the tourism, but also transportation in general and their CO2 emission, carbon dioxide emission, which has a greenhouse effect, keep the Earth warmer, right? Per passenger per mile. So the higher, the taller the bar, the worse, basically. On the right side, you see, for example, demand response, which is like something like, for example, earlier chapter we talked about base jump, right? People jump off from the cliff and they wear suits and they get into trouble quite frequently. And they would have to call emergency, and a helicopter or something have to go rescue. And that's one of the worst kind in terms of CO2 emission per person, per mile. Ferry, boat kind of thing that we use for cruising and tourism, that's also pretty not good. It emits a lot of CO2. Driving a car yourself is not a good idea. Taking a bus is better. Anything else? Domestic air travel is right here, right? In kind of middle. So yes, a lot of activity, a lot of transportation means are used more so in a leisure recreation tourism context. And they're contributing to CO2 emission. There are various types, except in addition to CO2, air pollution, global greenhouse effect, there are other types, other aspects of environment that are impacted by tourism. For example, water top in this, I just extracted some water. Golf course in a tropical area, for example, Southeast Asia is very famous for golf resort. They use water for 60,000 villagers. One golf course uses water for 60,000 villagers. It also uses chemicals, herbicide, pesticide, you name it. Some golf courses are going more environmentally friendly, organic, quote unquote, but others are not. What about air? Again, CO2 issue. Transatlantic round trip flights, for example, let's say you're going from here to Toronto to London, and London come back. That round trip flight emits almost half of the other CO2 emission by that person in a year. So that means if you take those transatlantic trip twice, like go back and forth, now you already emitted average one person's CO2 emission for a year. You double your CO2 emission for that year, right? And increasingly, we're traveling more like that. Well, at least before COVID. Littering, right? Garbage, wasting, throwing the garbage in nature. That's also problematic. Some hiking trails in a Peruvian Andes mountain have been nicknamed as a toilet paper trail, which is very, very sad because a lot of hikers would leave toilet papers and other garbage in that area. Soil erosion. This may be very surprising. Soil erosion. If just people step on the soil, natural, like not paved soil, it will lead to increase in a runoff and a decrease in water permeability. What that means is that the soil gets pressed and it gets hard. When the rain comes, it doesn't get soaked into the soil right away on that spot. It starts to kind of like go off to a certain direction, and the soil is tilting to a certain direction. All the water comes to one spot. It creates a big big water puddle, or it will lead to a mudslide, bigger damage on that vegetation, animals, all that kind of stuff. So soil erosion, just stepping on the soil, can have long-term impact. Chapter also talk about outdoor recreation effects because we get out there in the nature, we do stuff. Obviously, there's a direct impact on the nature. One of the most infamous, like negatively known thing is this, jet ski. Is that what it's called? It emits certain type of gas type of thing in the water directory, which considered to be bad for the water quality, but also the things that are living in the water, basically, right? And their snow ski, snowmobile also has a similar idea, similar issue. The right side of the picture is a golf course. I was a golf player. I worked at the golf course for 4 years as a part-time job as well. So I know how much of water it consumes. The sprinkler is crazy, especially summer days. A lot of pesticide and pesticide and herbicide, to kill their, those weeds as well as bugs, especially in a cheaper golf course, really, to be honest, because it's easier, cheaper way to control those things as well. So next time, if you go to golf course, you would please notice maybe you don't see a lot of bugs, which is weird because golf course is arguably in the nature, right? But often you don't see many bugs. And that's because of the pesticide. This is the sentence from chapter, and it's true. It's based on the research and science. Even the impact of human-produced noise, sound, on a park wildlife ranging from birds to elk has been a growing focus of scientific study, suggesting that animals modify their behavior, and it has a wider ripple effects on the entire ecosystem, basically. Because animal eats certain things, bigger animal eats smaller things, smaller animal interact with the vegetation, all that kind of thing can be interfered by human-produced noise. Actually, I worked with a colleague in a previous university I worked for. He was in forestry, and he did an experiment to see how noise and other things that caused by children, group of children, have a long-term effect on the nature. Sometimes school take the kids in the nature to learn about environment and how that works. Well, what they found based on observation study was that even small noise and everything that kids make, well, kids can be very loud too, they will change the behavior of the small animals like birds and even like deers, for example. It has a long-term effect because they stop coming they will be vigilant and stay away from that area once that happens. And the kids also go off the trail usually and pick up some flowers. That's not good. They also leave the footstep on those things, so that soil erosion occurs more so because, well, they're kids, right? And they have a long-term impact on the nature. So how can we address these issues? In terms of solution, there are two basic principles. One is conservation, which is basically using nature. We're using it, but efficiently. And we're going to use it carefully so that we can use it in a long, over a long term and then sustainably. Like, for example, going to camp. So you're using the nature, but maybe you're going to pick up some garbage, or you're going to bring the garbage that you produced, for sure. The other principle is called preservation. It's the protection of natural areas from human damage. So it's no use. Don't use. Do not disturb at all. These are the basic two principles. Now, how do they work in actual leisure recreation context? For example, national park system, adopt them both in Canada. National park system in Canada is based on our 1930 National Park Act, which is dedicated to the people of Canada for their benefit, education, and enjoyment. That means it's a conservation. We're using it. We're using it wisely, but we're using it. Natural area. But also, national park, or at least some part of it, is to leave the natural resources unimpaired. This is more of a preservation, right, for future generation. If you go to national park, you would realize certain area is open for camping or hiking and those activities for the use, but other part of area is actually prohibited from entering and using. And that's because it's a preserved area. Okay, so we use two different principles, even in the same park sometimes. And we, as a user, we really have to respect it because there are principles and reasons behind that too. Having said that, though, in 2018 and 19 season, which is pretty much the latest statistics because, well, last year we messed up with the COVID-19. There's a 4.1 million visitor to Banff, 2.4 million visitor to Jasper National Park System, and almost 16 million visitor to all Canadian national parks together. That's a lot of people. Because Canadian population is what, 32, 33 million? So about half go to national park in a year. That's a lot. Obviously, this number includes international visitors as well as the people who visit those areas multiple times, right? But still, it's a lot of people. So that means a lot of environmental negative impact still. What else can we do? One of the things we can do, and important, is ecotourism. It's a form of tourism, it's a type of tourism, right, involving visiting fragile, pristine, and relatively undisturbed natural area. So we arguably go to some area that's vulnerable, that's actually, subject to the climate change and even extinction and stuff like that sometimes. By doing so, the point of ecotourism is to not just entertaining people. It's not about entertaining so much, but it's educating the tourist about how beautiful and valuable certain type of environmental elements are, whether it's animals, whether it's ice, whether it's mountain, whether it's water, whatever that might be, and how endangered they are sometimes. For example, one of the popular destination is glacier, the ice. People want to see that. We know the science suggests that it's receding. The amount of glacier in the world is decreasing and decreasing. There are actually tourism package where you can get to go to a certain area and you can see, okay, 1950 glacier was up here. But now you can see glacier receded far, far behind. So you can actually see that impact of climate change firsthand, so that you can not just learn that information from the book or from the media and understand in your mind, but you can actually feel it. So that research sometimes suggests that that will lead to more behavior changes among those tourists. They would have probably started to do more environmentally friendly things in their everyday life as well. And also, ecotourism provides funding for ecological conservation. They tend to be very expensive, and the reason why is that the part of the money goes to those ecological conservation. And also, a lot of ecotourism benefits the economic development of a local culture. Sometimes these areas are belonging to certain indigenous peoples or other people, and will try to benefit those local cultures and people through those programs, rather than using a big company, for example, things. So really the question is this, from the chapter, saving the world is more important than seeing the world, as in tourism? Should we stop traveling, doing tourism at all, for the sake of saving the world? Because yes, there is some environmental impact of tourism and outdoor recreation and all that. Should we stop all that together? What would you say? What kind of argument can you make based on a concept that we just learned in this chapter? There are benefits, a lot of benefit to human beings as well as the earth, the environment, related to leisure recreation, tourism, and outdoor recreation as well. But also there's a lot of negative impact as well that we have to be aware of. How can we balance that potentially? This is a very, very important question that we are facing and we'll keep facing in this century. Now, this is the end of chapter 7. 3 major topics we have to make sure we understand. First is, can you discuss how space-related concepts apply to leisure examples and leisure context, such as crowding, distance decay, space-time compression? Secondly, can you explain and apply place identity, place dependence, and third place? They're very important concepts. And also distinguish these concepts from each other, okay? They're different concepts, don't mix them up. And then finally, identify negative environmental impact of leisure, tourism, outdoor recreation, sports activities, and discuss pros and cons of potential solution. We learned about a couple of solutions. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. There are problems to that too, limitations to that too, and we gotta learn about that, okay? So that's chapter 7 about leisure's geography, and I will see you in the next lecture. Bye now.